a person like the caliber of Dr. Sprian Kizito. Lwanga took time, but I think the function was elaborate, and it was a nice send-off for him.
It was a nice send-off and a very befitting one. To me, I think, yes, 10 people spoke, but I also think they really tried to manage time, because we interred the body of the late Bishop, I think, at about 3 o'clock, and when you look at the program, and I think everybody who spoke, you know, there wasn't a lot of that politicking that we normally find at some of these functions. People were spot on, they did manage time, and then the flow of the event itself. To me, I think, yes, there was very good order from when we came in, parking, doing all the things, and I think we want to commend the Catholic Church, and of course, whoever was actually part of that. I heard them repeatedly thank the Honorable Nachwala Chinji, the Prime Minister, and quite a number of other government officials, Honorable Judith Nabakoba, and those actually from the side of government. And I think it was a well-organized event. I call in a Pan-African Friday today, I want us to actually focus on the archbishops. Let's mourn the bishop that we've lost on the continent. In the last 5 days, in last 1 week, you know, we've lost many of these. Remember, this is what they call the symposium of the Episcopal Conferences of Africa and Madagascar, and they had their 50th anniversary here in Kampala when they're celebrating 50 years. It happened here in Kampala in 2019. Uganda was the host country, and of course the Archbishop now. And to become a member of that symposium, you come as an Episcopal Conference of your country. And so Uganda Episcopal Conference, which is now chaired or headed by the Archbishop Anthony Joseph Zua of China-Mitiana, then of course the Episcopal Conference of Juba, the Episcopal Conference, the National Episcopal Conference of Cameroon, and the Episcopal Conference of Tanzania. All these actually lost bishops in this Easter weekend, in this Easter holiday. And to me, I think, yes, it is something that we can't just let go as Africans, of course, in a way. Let's just start with that, of course, as we mourn them, but also examine the impact of church to the state and development, socio-economic and everything. Welcome.
Well, I can say my heart and sympathies are with the Catholic Church on the continent, of course, for having lost 3 actually archbishops and a number of and 2 bishops. But again, I just have to look at the bishops that actually died during the Easter weekend. The archbishops have something in common. And this is something perhaps I wanted us to look at, because in most cases in the Catholic Church, by the time one becomes a bishop and later on an archbishop, he is well read and well traveled, of course, that perhaps by the time he comes back, he has all it takes to lead the diocese or the archdiocese, or to lead the sheep in both development, in both physical and spiritual development. So that is actually the ideal situation, that because of the exposure and education, they are in such a position to do that. Now, I honestly wish to draw attention to Cameroon, where Cardinal Christian Tommy, he actually also passed on during the Easter weekend. On the same night as he was actually Archbishop Emeritus of Douala. Douala is the biggest city in Cameroon. Actually, it is a port city, just like you see Dar es Salaam. Just like you see Dar es Salaam, Lagos, whereby it is the largest city but not the capital city. Though Yaoundé is the capital city. So, dying at 90 years, he has been a pillar of peace in Cameroon. Cameroon has one unique situation, that it was colonized by 3 powers. First, it was colonized by German. And of course, after German was defeated in the World War I, then countries were given to other colonies. Of course, those countries that were under the colony or were colonized by German were given to other colonial powers as mandate states. So Cameroon was given to both France and Britain. Now, France had the biggest part, and the smaller part was actually the one that was being colonized by Britain. So at independence, the British Cameroon, those who were in the northern part of Cameroon said, for us, I think we are at home with Nigeria because they border Nigeria. So the education system is the same, so eventually we are next to Nigeria. So the southern part was actually now annexed to the French Cameroon. But since independence, that part has been marginalized. So much so that in around 2017, there was a serious secession movement saying that, look here, I think, why don't you leave it? Because the government in Yaoundé has not really paid attention to that particular part. So much so that even when it comes to deployments, they are never deployed. So we see Cardinal, now late Christian Tommy, playing a key role in bridging this gap, saying, look here, this part of Cameroon. But he also worked with the Archbishop, because Cameroon is divided into 5 Catholic provinces, archdioceses. That he worked with his counterpart, the Archbishop of Bamenda, which takes that part, to ensure that they also get schools, they get Catholic universities, so that are actually are using English as a medium of instruction. So the situation in Cameroon, whereby you have a part that, even to make matters worse, in November last year, he was actually one of the people who were abducted, because he was on a peace mission. Yes, and he was abducted. Yes, he was abducted in November. So that means that even at his old age, at 90, he still felt that, look here, Cameroon, no part of Cameroon should secede. People should work together for the purposes of building a one Cameroon.
Well, thank you so much. Mututa, we've seen bishops, we've talked about them, we've read about them. It's very unfortunate now that we are mourning 4 of our bishops on the continent who have died, who have gone to be with the Lord. Like he said, he's given a lot of explanation on Christian Toomey, the Cardinal Emeritus in there. But of course, we've also, in African movements, in African history, in anything that we do up to the continent, we've always seen and felt the impact of these various and different, the impact of these religious leaders more so in shaping our lives on the continent. We say so much about Bishop Desmond Tutu in South Africa. You remember Bishop Mchube in Zambia and in Zimbabwe. In Zimbabwe, his issues there with the then President Robert Gabriel Mugabe. To me, it was actually also another very open critic of Paul Biya, and telling him all these other things every other day, demanding for this and that. In a way, the bishops, or the church as it is, in shaping society and today, the continent of Africa and its development.
There's been this saying that the churches, church leaders should desist from making statements that are deemed to
be divisive,
or sound political. The thinking is that in a given community of a church establishment, you are likely to find there people who are of different political shades. You find there those who support this, those who support. So it is assumed that when a church leader goes political, he divides his church, which is also true. But at the same time, issues of leadership, issues of politics, issues of humanity, issues you can't completely disconnect them from any form of leadership, be it cultural, be it religious, be it other academic, because when people sit together, they are likely to talk about things that concern them. And there is no way they are going to talk about those issues that concern them without addressing the issue of leadership. Now, for me, I think it is true that leaders of churches or mosques or religious leaders shouldn't look like they belong to a particular lining in terms of politics, because then that undermines their capacity to be able to give guidance. Now, we're talking about bishops who have been open critics of establishments, but also without necessarily moving personal positions. Because when you look at Archbishop, actually it's Cardinal Tume, he was a critic of government, but also he was not supporting the other groups that were against the government. When he was kidnapped last year, I think November, yes. He talks, when he's talking about the experience with the kidnappers, he said he's looking at young men and he's telling them, why are you killing people? Because by killing the people who you are pretending to be supporting or protecting, you are not doing any service to your people, because these are the same people you are killing. And of course, he says he gave them a very long lecture, which they listened to, and they spent with them about 13 hours in his captivity. And by the time he left, I think these guys had also understood him. And we, last time when we were talking about Archbishop Rwanga, we also talked about the same thing, that he is one person who was very misunderstood, I think, by both ends, those who support government and those who are against government in this country. Dr. Rwanga would heap praises on the government whenever he felt it was necessary, whenever he felt it was right, whatever government that had done and was the right thing, he will thank government and praise government for that.
For every good thing they do.
The next time when he's in church and is criticizing government, then you will think this man is anti-government. So, but when you read at both texts, then you realize, well, he's trying to be an advisor, and no wonder the president in his message was saying the Archbishop was a counselor and was an advisor. Which really correlates with the other earlier statements that had been made about him. So I think it's also a lesson for religious leaders. We have in these places, in Africa, for example, religious leaders who are always worshipping the leaders. And then you lose your meaning, you lose the saltiness that the Christians talk about. And there are also those who are completely opposed to what the government does. And you also lose because then there's not going to be a middle lane where you can sit and say, no, but this was right and this is wrong. People sometimes thought that Archbishop Rwanga was too much for the opposition. And you know, opposition people were very excited about that. But one time when he tried to correct them, you remember how the people were abusing him on the social media and everywhere. Now he became an enemy overnight, which is also a problem in Africa, that you can only relate with the person when he's heaping praises on you or is supporting your cause. And when he thinks like you feel like he's no longer supporting you, he now becomes an enemy. They become enemies. Yes.
Well, thank you. Now, there's some other thing that normally people draw a conclusion to and say we are miseducated as Africans or as blacks because of the colonial system of education that we co-opted here. But yet again, you remember that the same people who brought to us the education that we're castigating today are the same people who have brought this religion. And you'll notice that we give a lot of reverence to religion, and we don't even want to ask certain things about that. I want us to marry these, that why are we excelling in the religion as opposed to the other things, and looking at religion itself in the democratization of society? Because whenever we get into democratization of society, there's so many players, there's so many things that keep coming on: socialization, political ideologies keep coming in. And when we talk about these things, what ideology are you actually promoting or teaching about? But then there's also another factor there called the religious bit of it. And you'll also notice that the continent of Africa has been riddled by several civil wars than any other thing, actually. We've had more civil wars than all the other calamities that have possibly disturbed us, but in societies that have this prevalence. For example, when you look at the Catholic Church, its order, and it's everywhere. We talk about the SECAM, for example. Now, the SECAM is the African Union of the Catholic Church. It is actually the African Union of the Catholic Church on the continent that you belong. You're talking about the dioceses, the archdioceses in Cameroon. It is exactly what we have. It is the same thing that we have. In 1997, the Pope also here, you had yesterday Archbishop Zua, read to us, Bishop Zua, tell us about these different ecclesiastical provinces, the Gulu Ecclesiastical, Bararam, Tororo, and Kampala. And then you look at that very good setting and order that we get to a level where we disagree politically, we disagree on maybe issues of education, but when we all now fall back to church, you find that in a way we sit together, we agree, we receive communion at the same time, we do the sacraments at the same time. Why do you think we're actually excelling and doing well in as far as religion is concerned, as opposed to the other things that we castigate, yet we got them from the same source?
Well, first of all, is even before the coming to Africa of Christianity and Islam, Africans were known to be religious. Very religious people, believed in their traditional religion. So it was just a switch that how they believed in their traditional religion is the same. Yeah, that's why you find that maybe I think that is why even everybody who thinks of forming a church, a religion, runs to Africa, because Africans are actually known for being highly religious, believing in God. Yes, but what I just want us to understand is that there is no way we can divorce the church from politics, because there is no way we can divorce the church or the mosque from the management of society, because ideally they are the same people. They are the same people who go to church, and they are the same people who actually pay allegiance to the various political players we have. Then also, secondly, that even they are the same people who go to church, who are actually our leaders, who come out to become our leaders. So in this particular case, therefore, we must appreciate the fact that at times the religious leaders, of course, in their roles of giving guidance to society, definitely they will step on other people's toes. Now, the other unfortunate part that we are also having, I think this is I'm seeing in Africa. Africa has a radical opposition. Look at every country there is an opposition. It's a radicalized opposition. That actually in the opposition, whoever criticizes them, tries to correct them, becomes a sycophant. He has been bought, he's an oppressor, you get it, without even looking at the merits of it. And it's not only in Uganda, it's everywhere. That when you try to correct the opposition, then you become an enemy number one, regardless of your standing, whether you are the Archbishop, whether you are the Mufti. But as long as you come out to say, look, I think we should do this, then you become and that is why Archbishop, the late Cardinal Christian Tumi was kidnapped, because it was, now look here, if you say you're liberating people, the rebels, if you're liberating people, then you're killing them. If you say that you're being oppressed, you do push for your welfare, not secession, because I mean, this is something different, and that's how he was kidnapped. So these are some of the issues that, as I think, much emphasis, African governments also should pay emphasis on building opposition. Because in Africa, the opposition, first of all, is looked at as a criminal gang.
the opposition.
Yes, because that being in opposition in some African countries is like a crime, and therefore they do not. And once you turn it into a crime, then you radicalize the opposition. But the only way that they feel they can survive is either being radical or being unruly. So I think it's also high time that African government thought of looking at the alternative side, the opposition. That whereas you're in government, because government is made up of those in power and those in opposition, that there must be ways, just like you see in the US and the UK, that it should be incumbent upon government also to look at how the opposition is also faring, so that we can also have principled, we can have a focused opposition, an opposition that knows that it is playing complementary, but it's not coming to destroy. That is one way of of the radicalizing the opposition in Africa. Then finally, still when it comes to the issue of the church, the church's involvement in the politics in Africa goes back to independence. That in most cases at independence, people organized alongside their religious affiliation. For example, in a Francophone Africa, most of the leaders came from the Catholic Church. Why? Because they were the majority in those particular countries. Now, in some other countries, you would find that Catholic, just like we had in Uganda, the Catholics had their own outfit, the Protestants had their own outfit, and then the Muslims were deciding on where to really run to. So these are issues that have been with us, and we can't run away from them. I think the only thing is that we as Africans, we need to see how do we move forward without necessarily using our religions against one another, without necessarily seeing that whoever criticizes you is actually an enemy.
The issue of religion, especially in the African context, I think it needs to be re-examined. Last time we talked here about are Africans being taught religion or they are being taught Christianity? Are Africans being taught Islam or they are being taught the Arabic culture? I think that issue needs to be looked at, because you look at what is being done, then you realize there is a problem. Because when you look at the Catholic Church, for example, which has moved on from being a state, actually still a state religion when you talk of the Vatican. And when you look at the Anglican establishment, which is also by origin a state religion, because the Queen of England is the head of the Church of England. So that fusion is still there. Now, when it comes to Africa, I don't know who told these people who came with religion that Africans were not understanding. Apparently, when you look at the number of of believers, for that matter, on the globe, other than other religions like Hinduism in Asia, and the other Islam in the Arab world, I think Africa has the biggest chunk of people who believe and practice religion. But then you wonder, why have we remained the way we are? Is it part of this religion a problem? Which is also an issue which needs to be examined. Do we have to completely focus on religion and forget all about the rest of aspects of life? And when you look at this, especially now, Dr. Ruanga and the Cardinal Tum, these are the things that they are looking at, that you are going to make people think more of the life they are leading than the life they are anticipating. That is the issue of expecting a good life somewhere, unfortunately, after you are dead. but forgetting the life you are living today when you are still alive. So religion has also been that complexity, but also when you look at the African establishment, is that most of this religion has been foreign, but it has also been a hybrid of other cultures. So much so that if Africa was also allowed to grow its own religion, its own belief, would have been maybe a better understanding of the things that we do than being told. Until recently, there were some people who are not able to read the Quran. Someone has to read it for you. Even the Bible, someone has to interpret it for you. So then, so much that you don't understand the things that you are being told because you are not yourself reading to understand what you are being told. But also, if that is not looked at very well, then there's also the spillover of people who have moved from religion into intellectualism. Now, using the intellectual capacity to interpret the things that we read in the Bible, which can also be a problem, that you will now begin developing certain concepts which are aligned either historically, scientifically, or otherwise. And you may also miss a lot of the understanding in between there. But when you look at these people of God who have died within this week, I think they were unique. But they were trying to extrapolate, to bring what religion is and what the person is. So you have religion, but you're also looking at the life of the person to who you are spreading this religion to.
Okay.
And this has been very crucial and very important. If people cannot go to school, if people are not having a good health, if people are not having money, even if you teach them religion, then that religion is going to be.
Now that actually brings it to something very important here. Is yesterday when we were sending off the Archbishop Rwanga, there was a book that was written about the program and so much about him, his autobiographies and stuff like that. And one particular article that was, I think, written by the Honorable Florence Nachwala Chienji, it shows the relationship of the Archbishop as a religious person, but with his relationship also now to culture. When you read that article in that magazine that we're giving to the mourners were in there. And so many people who were actually speaking and talking, who were saying whatever they were saying there, they were talking about Archbishop Rwanga as, yes, being this religious leader, but at the same time also being a man who loved culture. You saw the particular of his clan, the Mamba clan, come out to say he's been very pivotal, he's been a pillar in our clan and much of the things. And of course, I want to hear and know from you that, yes, like the event that we had, it was punctuated by religion and culture. The Katikiro of Uganda was actually there. The Katikiro of the clan that it belongs to was actually there. The Nabagereka of Uganda was there. And the other bit of culture coming into this particular event here. However, looking at the African Dream, for example, the Vision of Africa 2063, looking at the 17 SDGs, looking at quite a number of the things that we come to Uganda now, cascaded to Uganda, where we have the Vision 2040, where we have now the Third National Development Plan. Where do we see the church helping in that? Because yes, it's one thing that today Friday, people are congregating. Tomorrow Saturday, people are going to congregate. On Sunday, 80% of the country will congregate in different places. Apart from, yes, being there and maybe receiving Holy Communion and listening to the sermon as it was the episode of Paul to the Ephesians or the Galatians, or when do we see the church coming into now these issues, and how can we use the church to promote the African Union Dream of 2063? How can we use the church to teach people the SDGs? Do they know about them? Do they say them anywhere? Because by and large, at the end of the day, like you said, even when we breed a very religious society that is not enlightened, that is not ably educated, that does not know how the world, how the globe is moving and all the things, then at the end of the day, we just have a lot of people who can only say, praise the Lord, and that's it.
Exactly.
How do we fit the church into now these other issues in Dugwakol?
No, the church, I think, is already there. Because why I say that the church is already there, because one is that the church is one of the most organized institutions on the African continent, especially the Catholic Church, that it has structures. And in most cases, you find that whoever wants to develop their people has always worked closely with the Catholic Church, not only here in Uganda, but also in other countries, especially in sub-Sahara Africa. And this takes us to Napoleon, who said that a state or a country without a religion is like a ship without a compass. When you look at our anthem here in Uganda, it is, "O Uganda, may God uphold thee," so implying that we believe in God, that, and we believe in God as well as perhaps we believe in his.
But do the people know the meaning of our national anthem? It's just another song, like you have an artist go to a studio and make a song.
That is also another issue we can maybe discuss some other.
Whether it even makes meaning to anybody.
So, and
sing the anthem itself.
When you look at the anthems on the African continent, actually 70% of the anthems have the word God, and implying that Africa is a God-fearing person. But my thinking is that the best way of giving them a meaningful participation in the development of the continent, in the realizing the various dreams, is by engaging them. Is by how do they engage them, that at every planning level, and I'm happy here in Uganda that we have the Interreligious Council, we have the Joint Christian Council, so through these bodies, this government has engaged them. Secondly, we find that at every other time perhaps they are coming up with a policy, be it on education, because actually the church, the Anglican Church, the Catholic Church, the Seventh churches, and the Muslim community own a number of schools, own a number of health centers. At every other time they are coming up with the policies that are going to affect the education of the health sector. They are consulted, and which is actually very, very positive, that these people say, yes, they look at them as stakeholders. So therefore they should be looked at as stakeholders, even when at times they are seen to be criticizing perhaps the government or the opposition. Now look at a case in South Sudan, where they have also just lost their Archbishop in the of Juba, Paulino Loro. During the time there was that conflict between the South and the North, actually it was the Catholic Church seemingly doing a lot of work in that particular area, and they played a key role in the comprehensive peace agreement that is in the CPA in Russia. So that is how the Catholic Church has been. They played a very key role. That even just recently, the Riek Machar and Salva Kiir fallout, he has actually been, yes, a key person in trying to reconcile for the good of South Sudan, for the good of the development. So they should always be there to play a role of reconcilers, but not only reconcilers, but also guiding society, and at times also guiding leaders, right? You feel the leaders have gone astray.
Mututa, bring them into these very important things, because we will have presidents go sit at the headquarters in Addis Ababa, they will go to Arusha, they will go to Johannesburg, they will go to Rabat in Morocco, they will go to possibly Alexandria in Egypt, they will go everywhere. I sit in these summits, talk about these things, because even the continent itself has also structured itself in managing this. For example, we have about 8 regional blocks on the continent. We have quite a number of those. We have the coalition of anti-corruption, which is an African thing that you fit into one another to know how is Uganda strategizing, what is Kenya doing, what is Nigeria doing, what is all this, how do we fight corruption on the continent. Now these are efforts that we've relegated and left to the politicians. That we say, well, if you talk about maybe fighting corruption, then of course we've seen church coming out very clearly and vividly in issues of maybe where conflicts are, that you've seen them in conflict-ridden areas saying this and that, especially in elections. I remember the Intelligence Council of Uganda here sometime, I think the last election where Mugabe participated with the late Shanghai, the Intelligence Council of Uganda here dispatched their Council of Presidents, their bishops here to actually go, you go to Harare, you go to Mozambique, you go to maybe Bulawayo, and to make sure that yes, we come as ambassadors of peace. We come from Uganda, we've gone through this. We come from Kenya, we've gone through this, and quite a number of things. We are all Africans. If this happens, then it concerns all of us. Where do we put them? We've seen them in many of those, but they're very important things where we need to see them. I talked about the Vision 2063 of the African Union. How do you bring them in? Where do you see them? How do you see them getting engaged with the political leadership?
One thing which we also need to look at is that, of course, there's been this claim of the churches saying that why can they all, because they're doing such an incredible work with the government, why can they also be on the budgeting cycle of government, that the government should be able to give the money to the church to be able to run its activities. Now, of course, even without that, the government is giving money to churches. I know government spending money in some church projects,
education,
in health, and many other projects that are aimed at improving the living conditions of people. But that also has a danger. If a church is on a government payroll, then accounting is at two levels. You have to account for those funds financially, but also the issue of loyalty. If whoever pays the piper decides the tone. So, and I think religion is religious people are trying to completely disengage from the state control. Because should you be funded by the state, then you are not going to walk away from what the state would want to do. Even with this funding of these projects, these social projects, still there are areas where you find you cannot sustain things, because then the government is going to be like, so you have to keep quiet, especially in countries where governments are getting very strong. But at the same time, I think you also need to look at an establishment that can sustain itself even without government support. Of course, there's no way you are going to run out from government support. The government will be supporting you in one way or the other, because people who go to this religion are also citizens of that particular country. So what they access these services in all forms that other citizens are entitled to. But that also, like you said, I think there's need to integrate government, religion in some of these programs, especially on the continent. We have, and Africa apparently is one of the areas where these intergovernmental authorities have worked very well. So I think religion can also play a very big role in the advancement of the African cause, because then people can sit together and they can reason together regardless of their backgrounds, but also without particular high stakes like politicians, because for politicians, when they sit down to discuss, one is looking at how to benefit from this deal as an individual, so that tomorrow will go to the stage and praise himself, having cut this deal and having brought this for his government and for these people, even when it was not there. But for religions, I think it will be, of course, as a religious people also, people want to if a Ugandan is discussing a deal, who want it to be in Uganda. But still, it will not be as bad as it is when it is being spearheaded by politicians. So I think it's also a good thinking that the religious groups should also sit down, these chapters should sit down to think how we can help this continent to rid it of conflict. Because when there is conflict, religious groups are the ones suffering with refugees. They will be accommodating people in their churches. They are the ones who are losing their members in conflicts. They are the ones who will not be able to have them people together in terms of prayer and the rest. So it causes conflict brings a lot of strain on the resources of any given religious group. So it will also be in the interest of the religious groups to ensure that the continent is peaceful and there is development on the continent, because then the members of the various religious organizations will be able to contribute to the wealth creation of those organizations more than now running. We have been talking of Cameroon. That conflict has not only brought down the government systems, but also the religious groups. And I think this bishop was not the only person who was kidnapped. Other kidnappings in Cameroon have been taking place, especially between the two groups, because the English speaking are only 20% and the French, like I said, are the majority. Yeah, but now, because of the marginalization, they're also insisting that we should. So that friction has caused a lot of suffering in that place. So, and the religion and the religious groups are not spared. What again is disheartening is you find out that people are struggling because of a language that was introduced by foreigners, and they are not looking at anything beyond the language that they are speaking. You know, for Africans, it's a really unfortunate. You are fighting because one is speaking English, another one is speaking French. But you are the same clans, and you are same people, and you are same color. So I think sometimes we have been blaming the West for influencing us wrongly. But even years later, after they have gone, can't we sit down and look at what is good for us than continuously blaming them for the mistakes that we are ourselves making? Okay.
Well, our time has run out. We have about a minute only to get out of studios here. Ndugu, your final remarks on this, as we finally mourn the bishops that we lost the continent in the past a few days from after during the Easter weekend. We've talked about them, and may their souls rest in peace. Just finally, as we mourn them, and of course we've tried to look at their impact in our society, on the continent, and what we think needs to be done. In your closing remarks, and what you think actually needs to be done by the church in aiding and helping a state, as opposed to having friction where we normally see it.
Well, I think the prosperity of religion on the African continent is very much determined by the type of leadership in a particular country. That if you have a rag leadership, they will purely, if I can use you can be allowed to use the word, regalize everything. For example, you saw what happened in Zimbabwe in 2007, where when Archbishop Chube came out to condemn the human rights bad record of actually
the late Mugabe,
ZANU-PF and Mugabe, and the embarrassment that he faced, yes, from forcing him to actually resign. So much so that even the lady that was used to scandalize him was found dead actually. I mean, after a year in hospital. So these are some of the things that we must understand, that politics plays a very, very key role. But as I've always said, that in Africa we must try by all means to have our leadership right. Once we solve the leadership question, the religious space, the media space, the human rights space will always be there for everybody to enjoy.
Okay. Final remarks?
Yeah, but at the same time, I think as Africans we need to cut our clothes according to our feet, because sometimes we want to impersonate what others are doing elsewhere, and then we want to look like them, eat like them, and drink like them. But still, I think this continent has a lot that can provide in terms of resources. Of course, that is not even disputed. But also that we have built our own cultures, our own knowledge that is rich enough for the other people to understand. For example, a quick one, when you see people like in these now so-called developed countries, when you grow old as a person, you expect you to be dumped in the home of the aged, and you live there for the rest of your life because no one. But Africa, I think we have a better social security system, that when a person is old, is looked after by the family, and that is the best assurance.
They stay with us. We don't
dump them somewhere where they are waiting for death. And of course, many other things that that is looked at as a backward. A friend of mine was telling the wife that I need to send some money to people at home, and the wife was asking, what about their social security? What about their money? Why should we? Because theirs is that a person is a person, period, regardless of whether you have who, you have who, you have who. Of course, their system works good for them, but Africa is different.
A welfare society.
And we also have things that other people can learn from us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you so much, gentlemen, and I think we'll stop this here for today. And thanking everybody watching us. Greetings to you from the embassy in Addis Ababa, the Honorable our ambassador in Addis Ababa, Mama Rebecca Mugotengo. Thank you so much. She's actually watching and says thank the gentlemen in studios and send them my regards from Addis Ababa at the mission there. Well, we thank you so much, and thank you for being part of this. We'll stop it here now. We'll turn next week on Friday with our Pan-African Friday. My name is Jagan Asemakola Ziksoka. For on behalf of the team here, another very blessed weekend to all of you out there. Good morning and bye for today.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala, this is Good Morning Uganda Extra.